This week on NWP, we do things a little bit differently. Hello and welcome to a special edition of Nerds Without Pants. I am Julian, and I am not joined, as always, by Patrick and Angelo. It's a one-man show, and it's been a while. I'll get into that in a little bit, but I wanted to try to do this little special one-off, kind of as a way to get back onto the podcasting bandwagon. If you have been a long-time visitor to pixelbit.com, you may remember a little podcast project that I had started a couple years ago called Digital Mystery Tour. Well, originally it was called Sound and Action, but we had to change the name because that was already taken on iTunes. The idea was that it was going to be a short weekly podcast dedicated to video game music and soundtracks. It's supposed to be an easy little thing that anybody on the Pixelbit staff could put together, and we would kind of throw them together quickly and then crank them out, a week at a time. Unfortunately, it never really got much traction, not too much in the way of listenership. It was a little bit more difficult to work on than we had originally anticipated, and you're not actually going to find it on the podcast page at Pixelbit, and we were never able to get it onto iTunes either, so the only way to find it is to search for it on Pixelbit, and I'll get into that later. But it was a project that I was really passionate about, and I think that the few episodes that we did were really good. And I kind of wanted to do a special Digital Mystery Tour edition of Nerds Without Pants. And there's a reason for it, and I'll get to that at the end of the show. The song that we started with comes from Final Fantasy VI, and it's the theme for Celes, composed by Nobuo Uematsu, obviously. The man's a legend. It's, of course, one of my all-time favorite Super Nintendo games. Well, one of my all-time favorite games, period. And just a gorgeous soundtrack through and through. I think it's really possibly the pinnacle of the Final Fantasy series in all respects. So leading right on into our next selection, we have the beautiful and haunting intro theme, Fear the Heavens, from Secret of Mana, also on Super Nintendo. This was composed by Hiroki Kikuta. So here we go. Okay, and that's just a beautiful melody. I really think that the first time that I rented Secret of Mana and turned on the game for the first time and heard that track, I think I was instantly in love. And it's still one of my favorite video game soundtracks to this day. Moving right along, we have a piece from one of my all-time favorite video game soundtracks and also from my favorite game of all time. I've talked about it a lot on Nerds Without Pants. That would, of course, be Super Metroid. Again, for the Super Nintendo. You're detecting a theme, and we'll get to it. As I said, this is the theme of Super Metroid, and this was composed by Kenji Yamamoto and Minako Hamano. So here we go. Okay, and now for what I consider a little-known gem from the Super Nintendo once again. The reason it's little-known gem is because it kind of came out in the twilight years of the Super Nintendo's reign. We were already getting excited about the PlayStation 1 and the Sega Saturn, and this one just kind of came out, and it didn't have a lot of fanfare. It's called Demon's Crest, and it's from Capcom. It's actually the third in the Gargoyle's Quest series, the previous games having been on the original Game Boy and Nintendo. It's one of my favorite Capcom series that has gone by the wayside, and Demon's Crest on Super Nintendo, I think, is one of the best looking games on the system. It's pretty incredible, and I think that if you like the Metroid or later Castlevania style of gameplay, you should definitely seek a copy out. This was composed by Toshihiko Horiyama, and he may not be a household name like some of the other people that I'm talking about today, but you should go check out his catalog because he is responsible for some of the Mega Man X games, Mega Man and Bass, also known as Rockman and Forte, and also Onimusha 2, which is, in my opinion, the best of the Onimusha soundtracks. So here we go with Beyond the Colosseum from Demon's Crest. Alright, so this is going to be a shorter episode of Nerds Without Pants just because of the format. Digital Mystery Tour was always around a half an hour long show or so. The reason for that was to keep the file size small because with it being a musical podcast, we keep it in stereo. So it's a larger file than our regular episodes, which we do in mono. The reason that all of the games on this episode, up until this last one that I'm going to introduce in a little bit, are all from the Super Nintendo, is because the theme I selected for this episode is games that were purchased for me by my mother, who died at the end of July, which is why Nerds Without Pants hasn't been around for a while. It's just been a really rough period, and there's been other things that I've had to deal with and haven't really been able to devote the time to doing the show, and honestly haven't really been playing too much to talk about. But as I was thinking about her, she didn't discourage my video game hobby, but she also didn't encourage it. She just kind of went along with whatever I was into at the time and didn't judge me for it. And, we didn't have a lot of money growing up, but I got a few games here and there, and by and large, the games that I got were purchased by her or When I had some allowance money, I would kick in what I had, and then she would supply the rest. And, like some of the games, I got lucky because we had bought a computer, and I convinced her to charge a couple games to the credit card along with it. In the case of Demon's Crest, it was just on sale, so couldn't really pass that up. But, it's funny because people, I think when parents buy their kids stuff like this, they kind of do it, just to kind of shut their kids up, to keep them from asking for it, or just to be nice, or, they don't really think much of it. And they don't realize that what they're actually providing their children with is some really great lasting memories. I have very vivid memories playing all of these games as a teenager. And, they're some of my most treasured video game memories, and they come thanks to my mom. And I just wanted to take a moment to, I guess, thank her for not discouraging my video game obsession the way that my father did. He was very anti-video game, and she didn't mind. She kind of went along with it and was fine with it. And I always appreciated every game that she bought for me. I actually still own the original copies of a lot of the games that she bought for me. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap up here in a second. But if you liked this episode, I definitely recommend going to pixelbit.com and checking out the rest of Digital Mystery Tour. The only way that you can find it these days is if you go to pixelbit.com, go to the search function, and then type in Digital Mystery Tour. I was pretty good about tagging all the episodes that we did with that, so you should find them that way. And then you can stream them off of the site or download them directly. And if you like them, maybe put a bug in site director Nick DeMola's ear. Maybe we can convince him to at least get it onto the podcast page, so that way they're easily accessible, and maybe one day I can throw some more episodes in there just when I have the time and the mood strikes me. Especially if there's an actual demand for it, that would help a lot. And also, Nerds Without Pants will be returning. We'll be returning very soon. I'm hoping to record with Patrick and Angelo here very shortly. But and I'll go into it in more depth there. But I definitely wanted to kind of come on by myself and let people know what's been going on and give them a little something special. So to round out this episode, I have a track from the PlayStation 1's Castlevania Symphony of the Night. And I it's weird that I put this one on here because I had money by this time. I was working by the time Symphony of the Night came out. But I distinctly remember my mom buying this game for me. I remember because it was one of the first times that I'd ever stepped into Game Fellas, which would end up being the video game store that I would work for over 8 years. And I remember her picking it up for me. And the only thing that I can think of is that I must not have had the cash on hand at the time. And the game was like a brand new release. And I think I must have convinced her to buy it for me up front, and then I would pay her back with my next paycheck. That's the only thing that could explain why I wouldn't have paid for it with my own money by this point. But she did pay for it for me, so I wanted to put it on the list. Also to just have something that wasn't just Super Nintendo chiptune. The Symphony of the Night soundtrack, of course, is fantastic, top to bottom. But I wanted to put in a track that I thought my mom would appreciate out of all of them. She had a love of music just like I do. And what I have here, composed by Michiro Yamane, is, of course, the track from the library, which really needs no introduction. It is Woodcarved Palteeta. So we're going to leave you with that. Thanks for listening, and keep it pantsless, Internet. Goodbye.